Call this meeting to order. Kathy, can we have roll call, please?
Jesse Betcher,
Here.
Ron Buckholz,
Present.
Tweet Schuman,
Here.
Stacy Hessel, absent. Michael Mastry, is that
Yeah,
how you say it?
Maestri.
Maestri. John Rigghammer.
Here. All right, let the
Thank you.
record show we have a quorum. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, committee and hearing procedure statement of hearing notice, the full statement and committee of hearing procedure document, including directions for individuals wishing to speak at a public hearing, are to be conducted at the zoning committee meeting, are available at the front of this room next to the agenda for today's meeting. The statement of committee and hearing procedure document is hereby incorporated into the record for this committee meeting. Any public hearing conducting at today's committee meeting has been published as a Class 2 notice in accordance with Chapter 985 of Wisconsin statutes in the Sawyer County Record and the Sawyer County Gazette and posted. Okay, the next item is approval of the minutes from last meeting, April 22nd.
Mr. Chair, let me make a motion to approve it.
We have a motion by Mr. Buckholz and a second by Mr. Schuman. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, next item is public comments. Please note that comment time is intended for general public comments, not comments relating to a specific application before this committee. Each agenda item requiring a public hearing will have its public hearing conducted just prior to the application being considered by this committee. If you wish to speak on a specific agenda item, we encourage you to hold your comments until then. At this time, is there anybody for?
We have Linda Zomer for public comments.
Okay, Ms. Zomer, you have 3 minutes.
Linda Zilmer, 902 Holly Hill Lane, Bridgewood, Wisconsin, Edgewater property owner. I have 4 items for general comment this morning, and it's addressing both the returning members of the zoning committee and the new members, in hopes that you will take a look at your zoning hearing processes and help improve them. First of all, with regard to the minutes that you just passed, according to the zoning committee rules and bylaws, any interpretations or advice from attorneys are supposed to be incorporated into the minutes, and that has not been happening. I believe when that last month situation came up with the 2-2 vote, there were a couple of answers that the attorney provided that would be helpful to have in the minutes. So if you would please reconsider looking at the minutes again next month and including those comments. It also would have been helpful for last month's Board of Appeals or Board of Adjustments hearing, in that there was an administrative decision that was appealed, and the attorney representing the county zoning department at that time made statements that the matter that was up for discussion was addressed at zoning committee hearings and with legal counsel, and there's nothing in the minutes to reflect that that happened. So again, minutes are very important, and to look back that to follow the bylaws. Second of all is that the bylaws, the current version that you are working with, does not address those tie vote situations. Previously, a 2-2 decision was considered a denial. When these bylaws were adopted, Rebecca Roker, and I believe she coordinated with Andy Phillips, helped draft and definitely reviewed those. The subject of 2-2 votes came up and were not addressed, so something to please look to for the future. Also, I believe the county has spent a lot of financial and time resources on codification of ordinances, including the zoning ordinances. For another future agenda item, please include addressing the codification of ordinances. The work mostly has already been done. I would think that would also maybe be wise to put on hold any proposed amendments until this has been resolved. But right now, if a person or a committee member wanted to find zoning ordinances, there are about 5 different links on the county's website. The main ordinance, shoreline wetland ordinance, mining ordinances, they're all separate, including separate bylaws for the Board of Appeals and the zoning committee. And to have them searchable and codified into one place would be helpful for everyone.
You have 10 seconds remaining.
Okay, and then also your zoning hearings, please go back to reading the statement of hearing procedures and also the reading of letters from neighbors who have been notified by the county
Okay, thank you,
with
ma'am.
results. Thank you.
Next I have Al Gerber.
Morning.
Morning.
My name's Al Gerber. My physical address is 1932 Highway 40 Exland. I happen to be on the Board of Appeals. We, and Linda referred to it, recently had an appeal of a zoning administrator decision regarding, it was in regards to a small parcel that had 2 inhabitable dwellings on it. Neither of them were owner occupied. The great debate ensued. Everybody lawyered up. For an hour and a half, we listened to arguments on both sides, whether or not this should be an R1 decision that the zoning administrator could make, or whether it needed to be an R2 with a conditional use permit granted. My reason for being here is the ordinance seems to be very debatable or easily interpreted in different directions, and it really needs to be cleaned up. We shouldn't have to sit for an hour and a half and listen to strong arguments on both sides. The decision could have went either way. I've been on the Board of Appeals for quite some time. I first got on when Bill Crispin was the administrator. And of all the decisions that have come through while I was a member of that committee, this is the only one that I recall that I wasn't sure that we made the right decision, because the flexibility or movability of the ordinance regarding those particular applications. After the meeting, I was given some information through the zoning office about the discussion that had been made prior to granting the permit for those 2 rental units. It had been discussed before. There was language that said that it was going to be addressed. That particular ordinance was going to be addressed and cleaned up. That hasn't been done. Like I said, of all the decisions I've been involved with, this is the one that bothers me the most. If we reheard that same application, I'm not sure. In fact, I'm not sure we'd reach the same decision. I know for a fact that I would not vote the way I did to get all that information dumped on us in one brief meeting. So just an encouragement. I don't know what the process is for changing an ordinance or modifying an ordinance or adding a new ordinance is, but whatever can be done to get that on the agenda and get it cleaned up as quickly as
10 seconds.
possible. Thank you.
Then I have one other sheet for Kay Wilson. Is this for an agenda item, Kay?
Yes.
Okay, which one? Thank you.
Anybody else for public comments in the room? Anybody online? Okay, next item, we have one rezone application.
Yes, this is a public hearing in the town of Coudray and Radisson, rezone number 22-007, owner Riverside Golf and Recreation LLC. Part of the southeast 1/4, the northeast 1/4, section 18, township 38, north, range 7 west, parcel 004-738-181401, which is approximately 2.24 acres of a total 33.83 zone or acre parcel. It's zone commercial 1. And the second portion of this rezone request is part of the southwest one quarter, the northwest one quarter, section 17, township 38, north range 7 west, parcel 022-738-172304, which is approximately 0.52 acres of a 6.9 acre total parcel zoned agricultural 1. Purpose of the request is to rezone approximately 2.24 acres of parcel 1401 in the town of Coudray from commercial 1 to agricultural 1, and then to combine with other parcels to make conforming zone district requirements. Also, the 0.52 acres of parcel 2304 in the town of Radisson from agricultural 1 to commercial 1, and then combine it back with the other parcel to make conforming zone district requirements. The shoreline wetland district is not to be affected with this rezoning. As part of my staff report, again, the easiest way to kind of view this request is through the attached maps. But again, this is requested in order to basically draw new lot lines, because you have, mixing of these zone districts. You wouldn't be able to draw the lines around the structures, and that you're creating non-conforming zone district requirements. So that is the purpose of the request. And I guess I'll show you the corresponding maps from that. Again, the applicant is requesting these smaller rezone areas to ultimately split off the existing house and pole shed area from the bar and restaurant area that contains the golf course and clubhouse. The town of Coudray comprehensive future land use map show this area is mixed of agricultural and commercial. The town of Coudray land proposed from change to commercial 1 to ag 1. The town of Radisson comp plan shows this area as agricultural. That request would be from agricultural to commercial for that 0.52 acres. Let me show you some of that map form and see if there's any questions with that, or kind of at least go through that. This is probably one of the better maps of it. So the town line is actually the north-south line that runs right here. You can see with the mouse. So again, we got the pink checkerboard as commercial, the lighter yellow shade as agricultural. The proposed lot line would jog down here around the existing bar restaurant and then continue down to the river. There's an existing house and pole shed here that would be on its own separate lot. But since we have that mixing of zone districts, we need to clean that up. So this one here, the one where the bar restaurant is, that small 0.52 acres, they're requesting that to go to commercial. And then for lot 2, that existing commercial near the river, they would actually bring that all into agricultural. So that is the purpose of the request. As promotion by the town boards, this is the one for Coudray. Motion was approved. James Bassett, Chairman, Phil Miles, Supervisor, Jeffrey Honuth, Supervisor. No additional comments. Signed, Charlie Warner, Town Clerk. The town of Radisson, motion was approved. Phil Quaid, Chairman, Robert Villiard, Supervisor, Ron Kinsley, Supervisor. No additional comments. Signed, Cheryl Gerber, Town Clerk. There were 8 opinion letters sent out. 1 was returned with no objections. No additional comments. Signed, Keith and Catherine Carlstrom. That is all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Jay. At this time, we'll accept the motion to go in the public hearing made by Mr. Schuman, second by Mr. Righeimer. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are in public hearing for this. We go right to.
Okay, anyone to speak in favor?
Is there anyone present? Is the landowner applicant present or a representative?
He is, and it looks like he's muted online. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, we're present on Zoom.
Okay, do you have any additional information for us that we need to know to strengthen your case?
I'm sorry. Can you
I don't believe so. That sounded really detailed to me, the presentation.
I'm sorry, Mr. Schroeder, can you just please state your name for the record?
Jeffrey S. Schroeder.
Thank you. So is there anybody in the room who would like to speak in favor of this? Anybody in line? No. Anybody in the room who would like to speak in opposition to this rezone request? Okay. Any members have a question for the applicant? Or should we have discussion?
Yeah, need a motion to come on public hearing.
Motion to come out of public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. Buckhold, second by Mr. Schuman. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we are now in discussion.
Yes, this is the discussion action for rezone number 22-007 Riverside Golf and Recreation LLC. Legal description is previously read into record. Purpose of the request is to rezone an existing commercial 1 property to 2.24 acres of agricultural and an existing agricultural area to rezone that to 0.52 acres of commercial.
So committee members, any additional comments?
I'll make a motion to accept the request.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Regenheimer for recommending approval of the rezone request.
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Schuman. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Looking at this, Jay, to be down here, it says 1 of 2, existing A1. And looking over here, the other one, they want to change that on this side of the river to commercial, or is that already commercial?
Yeah, so are you looking at the map that's up on the screen? This,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I guess let me also bring up, let me bring up this one. So this is the preliminary survey that we got from Jesse Susan. And it is all occurring on the east side of the Cooteray River there. Because we have those split zone districts, in order to draw in new lot lines, those new lot lines, those zone districts need to meet the ordinance requirements. And really the only way to do that is kind of piecemeal this up, because we have this existing commercial area. And if we start chopping it up, we start dipping into some agricultural, and now all of a sudden we leave an agricultural area that doesn't meet the zone district requirements. You know, similarly, when we chop this one up, now we have some existing agricultural that doesn't meet the zone district requirements. So we had to do kind of a little bit of a flop here. So again, this area, that little small triangle up there, that's in lot 1, but in the other town, ironically. That one's existing agricultural, that's a 0.52 acres, and that one's proposed to go to agricultural. This one here, the area by the river, is the 2.24 of existing commercial, and they're gonna move that into ag. Now, with that lot, they would have a minimum 5-acre agricultural zone district, and then we wouldn't have this little 0.52 acres of ag sitting off on its own, which again, I couldn't approve a certified survey map with that, because now we've created zone district, illegal zone district requirements. So again, that is the intent of it, is to flip some zone districts around so they can make this lot split like they want.
Good, I understand it better now.
it is a little confusing with the different
Oh, yeah.
towns and stuff, but so it looks like though, it makes sense. We're not doing something that doesn't make sense if we approve this.
Correct. And, you know, we had discussions with the surveyor and the applicant, and we kind of felt that this was probably the best route to go. We have conforming zone district requirements. We're not, you know, reaching to a crazy other zone district. You know, where the existing house and pole shed is, you know, that really was never used as, you know, a commercial area anyways. So we're going to grab that additional land, make it into ag. Where that existing bar is, a portion of it's already on ag and really should be commercial to begin with. So that's that 0.52 that we're wanting to bring into commercial there.
Okay, and I see both towns approved, looks like by unanimous consent. It meets the comprehensive plans of both towns. So any further discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second recommended approval of this. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, conditional use applications, number 4.
You need findings of
Findings.
fact.
Sorry, who made, yes, findings of facts.
John did. We'll need findings of facts if you go in on the computer. You're gonna see on Jay's staff report on the second page that there are some from a list to choose from. You'll have to.
And if I could, Mr. Chair, this is Andy Phillips. I think we discussed this at the last meeting. If it's easier for the committee or a member of the committee to simply reference the findings of fact contained within the staff report, that's fine. We want to make sure that appears in the minutes, but you don't have to read each and every one unless you'd like to.
Okay, thanks, Andy. So I know we're allowed to do that, but are you saying that we have to do that, include it in the
No.
motion? Okay, we don't have to, but it would make things easier. Okay, we'll
For purposes of the minutes, I would suggest that when a motion is made to recommend approval, for example, that the motion also indicate that the findings contained within the staff report, items 1 through 9, are the basis for recommending approval. And it can be as simple as that.
And since you mentioned that, do we now have to include this comment from you, our legal counsel, in the minutes?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you.
It meets the 9 findings for approval.
Thank you.
My second stance.
Okay. Moving on, this is the public hearing in the Town of Round Lake conditional use permit number 22-015. Owner Andrew and Brittany Gerdall, part of the east one half of the southwest one quarter lot 2, CSM number 2438, section 6, township 41 north, range 7 west, parcel 024-741-06-3103. It's 2.22 total acres zoned residential recreational 1. Permit is desired for the multi-dwelling development that meets the dimensional requirements as per the Surrey County zoning ordinance section 17.2 parent B parent 15. The applicants are requesting to in essence repurpose an existing garage into a habitable dwelling on the lot. That may have already been done, and it may have been done many years ago. This would be the second habitable dwelling unit on this parcel. As per the certified survey map, the property could be split into 2 legal conforming lots. However, with the current placement of the existing structures, any lot split would create non-conforming setbacks between the middle property line. When we have circumstances like this, where that middle lot line would create setback issues, if the owner did not want to split this into those conforming lots, we have in the past used this opportunity to apply for a conditional use permit for a multi-dwelling development. This type of development is still limited to 1 dwelling unit per full 100 feet of width of frontage and 200 feet of depth and a minimum of 20,000 square feet. Per the CSM, the main lot would be allowed 2 dwelling units. In conversations with the owner, though, they are now wanting to rent both of the dwelling units. In conjunction with a multi-dwelling development, this could be viewed as a new 2-unit resort, which again is still covered under the request of section 17.2 parent B parent 15. The maximum number of dwelling units that could be allowed with the current lot configuration would be limited to 2. I do want to go through a little bit more clarification on that, and not that I'm supposed to address any of the public comments that were made, but specifically the chairman of the Board of Appeals. Last month, we did have an administrative appeal action, and this goes back to a situation that I brought to you, the zoning committee, back in September of 2020. I don't believe Mr. Schuman was on at that time. He may have been an alternate. We since had the late Troy Morgan on that, and Bruce Paulson, and I think that was just when you were starting, Mr. Betcher. But we had a situation where we had 2 existing dwelling units on 1 lot. And the question came up is, okay, when we have these 2 existing dwelling units on 1 lot, is that owner able to rent both of those out as a short-term rental? Or is that something that you would consider to be as a resort? And the conversation, at least from my recollection of that time and listening back to the minutes, is that we weren't going to classify those as resorts, that they would be as an existing, 2-unit rental, that 2 was fine, but more than 2, they would have to apply and be granted the resort type of procedures. And again, we were going to come back with ordinance language to solidify that. And as you individuals on this committee well know, when we do ordinance amendments, they take a considerable amount of time. I don't know how long we've been looking at the accessory structures on vacant land one, but it's probably been close to 7-8 months now. So they're not a quick and easy process. So with that, this request is a little different in that they have the land area to legally split this into 2 lots, but where the existing structures fall, they wouldn't be able to do that. They would create a middle line that would go through one of the dwellings, which now we've created a non-conforming setback scenario. I had discussions with our legal counsel, Andy Phillips, and I think we'll probably be discussing this a little bit more during the time of the discussion. But there is potentials that, you know, if this doesn't fall under the multi-dwelling development, it may even fall under a permitted use as 2 dwelling units on 1 lot, in that it is a approved or permitted use within that zone district for 2 dwelling units. Which again, when you have the 2 dwelling units, you need to have double the lot area requirements. Again, 200 feet of frontage, minimum each having 20,000 square feet, so 40,000 square feet in total, you know, which they have. I think the main issue comes up then again is if you rent both of these as short-term rentals, are you then now establishing yourself as a resort? Or are you classified as something else as a 2-unit short-term rental, which again, we'd look at probably potentially carving something out additionally for that. I also want to mention for conditional use permits that, you know, the approval process or the denial process, you know, that substantial evidence needs to be used, which is the facts and information other than merely personal preferences or speculation directly pertaining to the requirements and conditions an applicant must meet in order to obtain a conditional use permit, and that reasonable persons would accept in support of a conclusion. If the applicant agrees to meet all the requirements and conditions specified in the county ordinance or those imposed by the county zoning board, the county shall grant the conditional use permit. Any conditions imposed must be related to the purpose of the ordinance and based upon substantial evidence. The conditions must be reasonable and to an extent practical, measurable. The applicant must demonstrate that the application and all the requirements, the conditions established by the county relating to the conditional use are or shall be satisfied. Both must be supported by substantial evidence. The county's decision to approve or deny must be supported by substantial evidence. I have listed out several potential conditions for an approval process that would include a second flyer number must be attained for the second dwelling unit. Then a land use permit be required for a change of use from an accessory structure to a habitable dwelling. This conversion may also require uniform dwelling code inspections. They must comply with the Sawyer County Health Department for lodging and recreational facility if the second dwelling unit is to be rented, that all other setbacks are met, including sanitation requirements. And then all their federal, state, county, town regulations must be complied with. Per the action of the town board, motion was tabled. Ralph Hansen, chairman, Virginia Chapek, supervisor, Kay Wilson, supervisor. There's additional comments. The town board tabled the application for the following reasons. Needs clarification of the RR1 zone district for this type of after the fact development as related to uses authorized by conditional use, section 17.2A and B, parent 15, and the definition of multi-dwelling development of definition 71. Application does not fit in this zone district under the definition. The Sawyer County Shoreline Wetland Protection Ordinance 5.1, parent 1, only one principal dwelling or habitable structure is allowed per legal lot. If the zoning process related to the zone district is correct, the additional information would be needed as per the Sawyer County Shoreline Zoning Wetland Protection Ordinance, section 13.3, conditional use permits, in particularly number 2, the locations of buildings, parking areas, traffic access, driveways, walkways, piers, open landscaping, and number 3, plans of buildings, sewage disposal facilities, water supply systems, and arrangement of operations. Details and overall plans is that the evidence or inspection related to the proposed occupancy, sanitation, septic size system, capacity, building codes, and the building in question permitted as a dwelling or converted without proper permits or inspections for use of residential rental. location of buildings and driveways, parking areas, along with who is responsible for site management. A detailed property management plan would be needed. That was signed by the clerk, Kathy McCoy. There were 8 opinion letters sent out, 4 were returned. Did this committee have an opportunity to read those comments?
Yes.
Then those are therefore incorporated into the record. That is all.
Okay, need a motion to go into public hearing.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Buckholz, second by Mr. Schuman. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are now in public hearing. And before we listen to anybody else speak, I just want to reiterate what Jay said. All of the committee members have read the opinion letters that were sent to us. Therefore, we're not going to take the time to read each one here. They have been read, they are included in public record. So at this time, do you have any?
I have quite a few public hearing appearance slips, but generally you would ask for those in favor of the application.
Well, should we hear from
Yeah, and that would include
Applicant
the applicant. Yeah.
so is the applicant or representative in the room that would like to speak?
Yes, we are online.
Okay, can you state your name and address, please?
Yeah, my name is Andrew Goodall and Brittany Goodall, my wife, representing 12064 West Hildreth Road. So I'd want to clarify first, the application refers to the tax assessor's classification. We are not transforming a garage into a dwelling. As far as we can tell, the construction by the construction of the process, the cottage has always been a dwelling. It has a 30-plus-year-old furnace that's original to the structure. From everything we've been able to tell since we purchased it, it's been rented out regularly for years. And it's been tied into the septic system for as long as we can tell as well. And also previous owners lived in the main house or rented that out and the cottage. So the problem occurred when we tried to get a short-term rental license for it. We got one for the main house and we tried to get one for the cottage, but then we found out that this was misclassified in the tax records as a garage, which I don't really think it ever has been. It's an old building and it's been used as a dwelling through that time. So far, this process hasn't seemed to follow Wisconsin Act 67 and has been very affected by the opinions of neighbors as to whether the property should be used as a short-term rental. And it's been very heavily affected by these opinions regarding it being a short-term rental, not about our conditional use permit itself. So that's been difficult for us. As a result of these letters and town hall meetings, we've been subject to trespassing neighbors from across the road who've been trying to find evidence to why our property shouldn't be able to be a short-term rental. They've wanted a more bear-proof storage container than our shed, and they've complained when bears got into it, but they also don't want us to have a metal bear-proof container as well, and that's taken up several meeting times. Again, all of this is opinions of neighbors that doesn't fit the substantial evidence for conditions that we thought we were applying for in this process. So yeah, I guess we're just asking for this to be considered as for what it is, which is this 30-plus-year-old dwelling as an actual dwelling, not a garage conversion. So thank you for your time.
Okay. Let me ask questions.
Yep.
Is there any questions, Mr. Goodell, from the committee members? No. If not, is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of this conditional use permit in the room, online? No? Is there anybody that would like to speak in opposition to this CUP?
First up, I have Kay Wilson.
May I have Ginny go first?
Sure. Jeannie Chayback.
Thanks. I just wanted to give some background on this from the town board standpoint, which, was already read, so I'll repeat it with that. At the time that I started doing the research into this, I was not aware of the Board of Appeals discussion that took place on April 27th. I just kind of started looking at it, and to me, it seemed like it didn't fit. But I think that that's an independent conclusion that was come to with the same situation that happened previously. So first of all, the definition of multi-dwelling development regardless of form of ownership consisting of 3 or more dwelling units. This is 2. So that's not an opinion and that doesn't fit. The definition on shoreline zoning for what's allowed to be permitted, provided all other requirements, regulations, and setbacks can be met, and only one principal dwelling habitat structure is allowed per legal lot. Again, that's not an opinion. That's the way that the code is written. The lake itself is going to be impacted much more by 2 rental units than it would be by 2 people who are homeowners that are the same people there all the time. So that's definitely a concern. It's also definitely, according to the Board of Appeals, not a resort, but they didn't determine what it is. So I agree with Al that the code needs to be updated somehow to clarify that, because this just, to me, is a process problem and that it doesn't fit. I think it's in the best interest of the Great Alls that we all get this right, because they could be challenged in the future. And also the fact that there is no information in the actual CUP document about plans, about this property, about the septic, all the things that were listed previously. As a board and as a committee, I don't know how you can vote on something where there's nothing documented, because someday they're going to come back and look at that and say, what is it that we voted on? For that was the reason why I was strongly recommending that this thing be tabled. And I think that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. But please state your name, even though I announced you to come up. Please say it for the record.
Done this before. My name is Kay Wilson. I'm a resident and supervisor in the town of Mount Lake. So Jenny and I are kind of stating some of the same things, but I want to reiterate what the confusion that we found in the application for the Cordales. And I did some research, and I really take issue with the staff report that was prepared by Jay, because he said that when we have circumstances like this where the middle line would create setback issues, or if the owner didn't want to split into new conforming lots, they have the opportunity to apply for a CUP for a multi-dwelling development. In conjunction with a multi-dwelling development, this could be viewed as a 2-unit resort. Well, with my reading, I found that the multi-dwelling development consists of 3 or more dwelling units. This is true. So it is not a multi-dwelling development. And then according to the Board of Appeals, this is not a resort, because it doesn't have any amenities such as a bar, restaurant, or hotels. And then the shoreline wetland protection states in section 5.1 under purpose, number 1, the construction of new dwellings, replacement dwellings, additions to existing principal structures, and the construction of accessory buildings may be permitted provided all other requirements, regulations, and setbacks can be met. Only 1 principal dwelling habitable structure is allowed on a legal lot. Speaking with the assessor, this building is assessed as a garage. and always has been. The property does not fit the multi-dwelling development. It is not a resort, and the shoreline protection ordinance allows one habitable structure per legal lot. So I believe that this application should be denied. If approved, I believe it will open the county to countless homes and garages on one lot to expand to rental, creating a burden to our lakes and rivers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next I have a Michael Donato.
Morning. Morning. My name is Mike Donato, and I live at 12038 West Hildreth Road, right next to the Gradell property. And first, wanted to say I'm certainly not against business and not against anything the Gradells really intend to do. But my main purpose in objecting to this short-term rental, or whatever you're going to call it, is the local property management. And I don't find anything in the county that talks about local property management. There is, as you probably well know, ordinance from Spider Lake, the town of Spider Lake, that talks about property management, and their emphasis on it at least being local property management, so that even though there might be just instances of problems from the renters, there should be some recourse from the neighbors to, instead of calling 911 and the sheriff's office, reporting anything having to do with noise or cleanliness or parking or parties. There should be somebody that manages it locally. And as far as I know, Andy and Brittany Gradell have not done that yet. They haven't had anything local. If they proposed that they would do it themselves, their address is Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or Grafton, Wisconsin. There's a couple of different things in the tax records. And that's 5.5, 6 hours drive time. And so it's not an immediate response. Being next door, we're less than 200 feet away from their dwellings. I feel that, the purpose of the zoning committee, of course, is to protect and to approve those things that the property owners want to do from a legal standpoint. But as a neighbor, I would like your help in protecting my rights to be able to have some sort of a recourse. I don't want to be the property manager. I'm not nosy, but I will have to report things that occur that are just not right, with noise, with parties, with parking, and so forth. So that's why I oppose it. And I would like to have you take a look at your ordinance.
10 seconds for me.
Okay, your ordinance, and be able to come up with something for local property management. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next I have Cindy Bajold.
Good morning. City Bijou at 12041 West Hildreth. I've been a resident there for 18 years. I've also been a property manager for 15 years in the Sawyer County. I met the Gradells as a gesture to introduce ourselves and welcome them to the neighborhood. And we did that by bringing down multiple packages that had been left up in the snowbank for multiple days. We got a chance to meet them, say hello, bring their packages down. And we understand they indicated that they live in Africa and run a business, a sightseeing business there. And I'd like to just provide a snapshot to somewhat echo some of the comments of Mike, is that when they have acquired the property in January for the sole intent of a STR, we haven't felt the Gradells have shown any competency in providing management by either themselves or the people that they hire to work for them. So much so that their immediate neighbor, Mark Lenz, wrote a letter to the town supervisor. Kay Wilson and I have a copy, just, I don't have copies for everybody, we'll get that done as soon as we're done with the meeting. That they were concerned with the mess and garbage and issues that they put their place up for sale. And speaking of the garbage issues, it had been left up on the road all winter long. I spoke face to face with Brittany, gave her options to rectify that situation and never got done. Also, the answer to the garbage has been to stuff it in an accessory building down in the property. Matt from your sanitary and health department has been out to inspect, and they informed Matt that it's all cleaned up. Matt's gonna go back out there and he's gonna find it's not cleaned up. And this is not only a health issue for STRs, it's a health issue for the neighborhood. There's been severe driveway issues in the winter. They've left delivery packages. They've had parking on Hildreth Road because of the accessibility to the driveway in the winter, and it's inhibiting the road right away. In addition, a lot of the contractors have also turned around in my private property, damaging my driveway in the process. And Matt from sanitation has also identified garage structural issues at the Great Elk property that have to be rectified before anything should even be considered giving them the CUP. And they, the Great Elks appeared to have rented out their property, and Matt, so point of fact,
10 seconds.
Matt indicated that they also advertise on VRBO, and we saw them rent during Berkey without even having a license yet. So I ask you to consider all this in looking at the CUP.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, I have Jane Bidwell.
Morning, Jane Bidwell, and I live at 12149W Hildreth for about 14 years. I'm just going to real briefly address the sanitation issue. And I didn't have enough ink to make pictures, but these are just a couple of pictures of the garbage that's been left on the property. And up at the top of the road, and has been spread by bears up and down the road all winter. Another picture of their shed, which was filled with garbage all winter. And the bears have ripped the door off and pulled the garbage. Now, the Great Elks mentioned that the neighbors have been on their property looking for reasons to deny. The only reason that some of us have been on the property, and we have, there's no trespassing signs. We wanted to see where the garbage is coming from. Well, it appears bags and bags. So we went down, we just walked down and there it was, there it is. So they really haven't shown in the past any respect for the neighborhood as far as bears and animals strewing garbage all over. There hasn't been any recourse for us. We don't know who to call or talk to most of the time. They were there once or twice, but we never know if they're there. The only other thing I really want to address is that they have talked about putting a parking lot at the top of the property up here because the driveway is extremely steep. Just looking at it, I already believe they're almost at the 15% restriction for driveways, for impervious surface. Thank you very much. So I believe if they put any kind of parking at the top of that hill, they're going to be way beyond the impervious surface allowance. So basically that's, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you want me to leave these?
Next, I have Holly Donato.
I'm married to Michael Donato, live next door to the property in question. We live at 12038 West Hildreth Road. Been there for 3 years, about less than 200 feet from the cottage that's in question today. I know the short-term rental issue can be contentious. We don't mean to be sort of snobby, NIMBY neighbors. We're just trying to protect the neighborhood character and cleanliness. We know you have to balance property owners' freedoms with neighborhood well-being. We're for that. We've used Airbnbs, but not against them in principle at all. We know that state law limits and prohibits you banning short-term rentals, and we don't favor that either. We want you to continue allowing them under conditions on a case-by-case basis. But two attorneys that have interpreted the state right to rent law on short-term rentals have published their interpretation of the guidelines in two very authoritative publications. One is called The Municipal, which advises municipalities and counties like you, and the other is published in an organization's publication called Realtor, Wisconsin Realtor publication. They have said in those published guidelines that you could regulate activity rather than banning the existence of short-term rentals. So that's what we're urging you to do, is regulate the activity. And I don't know what's in your license, but that should be addressed, conformance to standards for cleanliness, health, garbage, parking, and all of that. That hasn't shown to be complied with. So that's the basis of our complaint. Do they have a tourist state rooming house license? Has they applied for that? As part of that, a sanitarian has to inspect that property from the state. I don't know if that's occurred. It doesn't appear that it has based on conditions there. And then the law treats rentals of less than 7 days differently than rentals of more than 7 days. And that's because the lawmakers in Wisconsin believed that less than 7 days is more of a commercial purpose, that you're within your rights to regulate less than 7 day rentals. In fact, the Great Alls have said they want to have a mini resort. That's stated in their application. Well, that implies that there's a presence on the property. All resorts have a manager or owner living on the property, so it can't be a resort. The steep driveway is inaccessible to parking, deliveries, and trash pickups. Those have inherently posed problems, and that impels you to regulate the rental activity. It's one thing to be absentee owned. It's another to live halfway across the world and try to manage and do damage control by phone. And that's what's been happening. And so we urge you to regulate the activity, not the existence of STRs on this property.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next, I have Linda Zilmer.
Linda Zilmer, 902 Holly Hill Lane, Berkshire, Wisconsin, Edgewater property owner. And I want to address a process issue with regard to this application as well as others. A circumstance I have seen increasing over the last several months in that while the staff.
I'm going to stop you right there, Ms. Summer. Are you speaking in
this-
opposition?
I am speaking in opposition and I will explain why.
Okay.
And because I don't feel that, first of all, what I'm seeing recurring is that at the time the application is taken in, insufficient information is required of the applicant. And so therefore, whether it's the town or the zoning committee, there's not sufficient information upon which to make a recommendation. Also, with this case, I think the town board members were very clear that you would not be able to approve it as it's been noticed as a multi-dwelling. And also having attended the Board of Appeals hearing and listening to Mr. Gerber, I do think it meets the zoning ordinance definition of a resort. So if you were to consider this, it should be considered as a resort, not a multi-dwelling unit. And therefore today you could not act on this as noticed. I believe the town has tabled this because they felt they did not have sufficient information and that the facts did not meet the way that this has been noticed. And whether they wanted to, for you to take more time to do it the correct way or to just deny it, I can't speak for them, but I don't think that under any circumstances that you're able to approve it as it's been noticed. Thank you.
That is all I have for the public hearing slips. If you want to.
Is there anybody else in the room that would like to speak in opposition to the CUP? Anybody online? No, we need a motion to come out of public hearing.
So moved, Chairman.
So moved. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay,
This is,
discussion.
yep, this is the discussion action, the Town of Round Lake conditional use permit number 22-015, owners Andrew and Brittany Gerdall. Legal description is previously read into record. Permit desired for multi-dwelling development that meets the dimensional requirements as section 17.2, parent B, parent 15. I'll be the first to admit that this portion of the ordinance is not written well. There is no clean cut fall into this type of provision. And that's, again, one of the potential ordinance amendments I would like to bring forward. But in the short term, there are still individuals that are wanting to have either these, 2 dwelling units on one lot that meets the minimum requirements to split it into 2 lots, but because of where structures are, because they don't want to have some other type of avenue for them to go to. For this scenario, I mean, if you look at the ordinance, this could be permitted as a 2-family dwelling and would have no conditional use permit needed and be a permitted use. We still have the rental issue, and now whether or not you find 2 rentals on one lot to be as a resort or not. So that's where I said, this is probably better to come through as a conditional use permit hearing. Otherwise, I mean, if you look at black and white of the ordinance, this could be as a permitted use. So that's one thing to take into consideration. I think the other element too is if these are 2 existing dwelling units, they could easily turn this into a 2-unit condominium and have Gerdall 1 and Gerdall 2 as the 2 forms of ownership. And again, look at renting them out separately as well. So there's ways around going through this even conditional use permit process. So that is where I felt, let's have all the information provided and bring it to zoning committee in this format as that conditional use permit. From there, I think I'd like to probably turn it over to Andy Phillips, because he probably has some additional discussion he'd like to add to this.
Yes, thank you, and good morning again, everybody. I want to take our time in going through this because, as Mr. Kozlowski mentioned, this wasn't an easy exercise in attempting to read through, interpret, and apply all the provisions within the zoning ordinance to this particular situation. In my mind, let's separate first the policy questions from the legal questions. The policy questions about whether you grant a conditional use permit have nothing to do with the legal interpretation of the ordinance. And so I want to make sure that the committee views its role here as a 2-step process. First, legal interpretation of the ordinance. Second, the policy decision to either grant or deny the conditional use permit. And so when we look at the legal question on the interpretation of the ordinance, Mr. Kozlowski is correct, is that an argument can be made that under the definitions contained within the ordinance, specifically as it relates to definition of, where is it, development multifamily. It's in development multifamily is defined in sub 30 of the definitions as a dwelling or group of dwellings on one plot containing separate living quarters for 2 or more families, but which may have joint services and or facilities. And so it seems that the 2 existing residences on this property fit within the definition of dwelling multifamily. If it were that easy, we could stop here. The problem is that we have a limitation on the number of dwellings that can be placed on this particular lot. And that has been noted, I think, throughout the public hearing process today. So, as Mr. Kozlowski said, you could interpret this ordinance in a way to allow for the 2 existing residences to exist on that lot as a matter of right without needing a conditional use permit. The second way that you can interpret the ordinance is by going under the conditional use permit process, 17.2 sub B, I believe it's 15. And when you look at the conditional uses that are allowed within this zone, RR1. 15 says that a multi-dwelling development is a conditional use within this zone. And so then we need to look at the definition of multi-dwelling development. And we go back up to the definition section within the code, and that's in item 71 of the code. And that's a development regardless of former ownership consisting of 3 or more dwelling units. And so here we have 2 dwelling units. And so it leaves a regulatory hole, if you will, within the code.
And from a policy standpoint, I'm not a policymaker, I'm a lawyer. I interpret the law as written, I don't make the law. But that in mind, it does seem odd that we would regulate, that we would not allow 2, but we would allow 3 or more. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That said, this committee could take a position that the way that it's going to interpret this ordinance is to say that 2 existing dwellings can meet the definition of multi-dwelling development, notwithstanding the provisions contained within the definition in subsection 71. So again, to just summarize the 2 options here as it relates to ordinance interpretation, the committee can interpret the ordinance to say this is a permitted use. In other words, there is no conditional use permit necessary. The committee could also say that a conditional use permit is necessary under 17.2B15, and in so making that conclusion that it interprets the ordinance in a way so that a multi-dwelling development includes an existing development with 2 different dwellings. And then the third option is to simply say that the way that we interpret the ordinance, we being the committee, is that there is no path forward here for a property in this situation. And essentially what that would be saying is that the only way that the Gradals can move forward is to indeed split their lots and have 1 residence on each lot. You can also take that position as well in interpretation of the ordinance. And so those are the 3 legal avenues, if you will, as it relates to application of the zoning code to this circumstance. And then depending upon which avenue the committee decides to proceed down, of course, if it's the conditional use avenue, then you have the additional considerations as it relates to recommending grant or denial of the permit, and then also the imposition of conditions associated with the conditional use permit. I'm not going to suggest that one way or another way is going to open this committee up and open the county up to some sort of administrative challenge through the Board of Adjustment as it relates to interpretation of the ordinance and potentially a circuit court action on the ordinance. Because I think as Mr. Kozlowski aptly noted at the beginning of this discussion, this isn't an easy situation given the way that the code reads. And so I think no matter how it is that the committee decides to move forward, this isn't a discussion that I feel will end today necessarily as it relates to that interpretive question. So perhaps I'll stop here because I've gone through the legal analysis and ask either Mr. Kozlowski if he wants to supplement what I've said or ask the committee if they have questions on this issue.
Thanks, Andy. That was very informative. I have a couple questions. So are you familiar with the case in September of 2020 where we had a similar situation that, you know, set some precedent, or are you not read up on that?
I am vaguely familiar with it. When I say vaguely, I was obviously not involved in that case. I did speak with Mr. Kozlowski about that case. As I understand it, it did involve a challenge to this committee's interpretation of the ordinance, but I do not have an opinion as to how that case may impact your interpretation here today, or if somehow this committee's determination here would impact the other case.
Okay. And so in your 3 possible, you know, scenarios or courses of action, I don't think the third one is a viable one where you say to split the property, because as Jay pointed out, it wouldn't meet the setbacks. So I don't even think that that is a viable option.
Well, and let me clarify, Mr. Chair, is that when we speak to that, the viability of that option, I'm not suggesting that the committee could authorize the split of the parcel today. All I'm suggesting is that if this committee were to say there is no path forward under the code to do what the applicants are requesting to do here, that their recourse then is to split the lots. And nobody has taken a look at any issues related to setback or anything other than Mr. Kozlowski saying, look, based on the map, there's no way they can meet the setback, but that application is not before the committee today.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Listening to this and not getting, it's tabled from the town of Round Lake, I believe we should postpone this on this committee meeting until we hear back from the town of Round Lake. on what their decision is gonna be. Make a little more sense to look at it. But I don't know how the rest of the committee feels.
I know how I feel. So I like to, if given the opportunity, I'd rather make a decision than not make a decision. But I also try very hard to follow the rules. And I don't want to do anything that's going to be in violation of our policy or ordinance. And I know that some of the verbiage, there might be some things that are omitted there. So it sounds like there are other options. So even if, hypothetically the CUP got denied, there are other options that would be conforming with policy as a multi-family dwelling, or the other example that Jay mentioned. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Buckholz, but personally, I would rather make a decision than vote to not decide on something.
Well, and if I could, Mr. Chair, if I could just interject for a moment, I believe that Mr. Kozlowski in his discussions with me, we discussed his desire to proceed through the CUP process, because if you look at the conditions that he is suggesting might be attached to that permit, those are health and safety type issues that he felt important to give the opportunity for this committee to address, as opposed to having it be a flat out permitted right on the part of the applicant to maintain those two separate dwellings without those conditions. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Kozlowski, but I believe that was the reason, one of the reasons that you wanted to place this before the committee as a CUP application.
Yes, to that extent, these are circumstances that we're starting to see more and more moving forward. The short-term rental, I'll call it the short-term rental game, isn't going anywhere. And individuals are finding ways to, maximize their profits for short-term rentals. And some of those may include, on those that have the available land area, is building 2 dwelling units on those lots. And it's really kind of, as a longer term policy discussion, is what zoning committee wants to, the zoning committee as well as the town and the public, to see what they want that to look like moving forward. When we had that discussion back in September, it was a very similar situation where there was 2 existing dwelling units on one lot. And again, they wanted to rent both of those dwelling units out as short-term rentals, but not go through the, larger scaled process as being classified as a resort. Now, if zoning committee, towns and public input is to put a stop to that, I think that's something that we have moving forward with an ordinance amendment. Yet we still have requests coming in for that type of particular circumstance without having the more codified language included in the ordinance. As far as this individual case, I was not comfortable with having it as a permitted use and something that would just be an approval process through the zoning department. I wanted to bring it forward as a public hearing conditional use permit process. So with that regard, yes, I agree with Andy that yes, I did want to bring it forward to you so that that we can at least cover some of these bases and potential policy decisions.
Mr. Chair. Well, let's go to Mr. Schuman.
Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead, okay.
Jay, is there, in the near future, are we gonna look at our ordinances? Because there's an obvious gap here and we must have missed. the
Yeah,
second dwelling. I mean, you go from 1 to 3.
Yeah, and the first time it was brought up was back in that September of 2020, and there isn't a lot of existing scenarios out there. With Matt McKay and myself, he counted, I think it was either 5 or 6, where we have these 2 existing dwelling units on one lot, and they're looking at renting both of those units. There are other circumstances in the county, probably close to, I would say, 100, maybe more, where we have 2 existing dwelling units on one lot. And those would have been pre-existing non-conforming uses, which means that they had those 2 dwellings in place prior to the zoning ordinance changing, which I believe was, I always get put on the spot for that ordinance date, but I believe it was either 73 or 75. That's when that ordinance amendment had changed that would only allow one dwelling unit per legal lot. So yes, obviously the gap has been found and corrections need to occur with that gap. It's as to what process or which way we route that to close that gap. Do we want to allow 2 dwelling units on one lot that, again, they have to meet the minimum frontage and land area to have 2 dwelling units? So this isn't, you have, 100 feet on Round Lake and you can put 2 dwelling units, it's that you have 200 feet and 200 feet of depth. And now you could potentially have 2 dwelling units because you meet the minimum lot size requirements. So, and those are the policy decisions that we have to get through eventually. And we're not going to figure it out in a day. We're not going to figure it out in a month. We may not even figure it out in a year.
Right.
But the one other, definition that's in here that really kind of throws a loop into everything is, yes, we have the definition of a multifamily development. We also have the definition of dwelling multifamily. And that one actually even fits more into this situation, as that is a dwelling or group of dwellings on one plot containing separate living quarters for 2 or more families, but may have joint services or facilities. So multifamily development doesn't work per the ordinance because there's kind of a conflict with the 3 or more, but then there's dwelling multifamily, which does. So there's definitely some gaps in here that need to be closed, and that's again why we at least accepted this application moving forward to bring this information to the committee, because it can be semi-difficult for me to just say, nope, I'm not even going to bring this to committee as a conditional use permit. Good luck, try again later. So I at least accepted the application to bring it forward to you here today.
And I understand where you're at, Mr. Chairman. You don't want to postpone or table things. But, I kind of agree with Supervisor Buckholz that we don't have enough information here. And our ordinances aren't exactly right on. So the town, the town tabled it. I would be in agreement with Mr. Buckholz that we have to postpone this until we have more information and until we review our ordinances, so we don't make the wrong decision here.
Thank you,
That's where I'm at.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate all that, and it kind of makes sense to me as I hear the public opinion. It seems to be, for the most part, it meets the ordinance as presented to us. The issue with the public opinion, garbage and absentee ownership. I mean, if they weren't absentee, or there wasn't a garbage issue, I'm not sure we would have all these complaints. So it's not even, I'm not sure, even if we correct the ordinance, whatever that may be, does that solve the issue to make a decision?
Good point. Mr. Buckholz.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm gonna make a motion to deny this CUP. Finding of facts 10 through 18 in my motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for denial of this CUP. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for denial of this conditional use permit 22015. Any further discussion? I have a couple comments. One, it's already there. It already exists. It's been there for 30 years, which does not predate the 1973 or 5 code. It sounds like this fits the definition of a dwelling multifamily in that they do share utilities. It was mentioned that they share electric and septic. So in my mind, it already fits a legal description. So I don't see the need to approve this conditional use permit for multi-dwelling unit, because that by definition does not fit, because it's not 3. So trying to stay in line with the written by the letter ordinances and codes, and not trying to make some unique exceptions, although this is a unique case. I think that I'm going to be in favor with voting with the disapproval, recommend disapproval. As far as the trash stuff, which is an issue, I don't think that needs to really be taken into consideration when we're talking about ordinances and policies and a conditional use permit. I understand the issue with that, but I don't think that that is a major factor in the decision-making process of this CUP. Any further discussion? We have a motion by Mr. Buckholz, a second by Mr. Schuman for the disapproval of CUP 201-5, and he has read in the reasons for denial, findings of fact. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion passes 3-1 for denial.
All right, moving on. This is a public hearing, the town of Meadowbrook, conditional use permit number 22-016, owner Janet K. Thompson Trust, agent Milestone Materials, part of the northeast one quarter, the northeast one quarter, part of the northwest one quarter, the northeast one quarter, all in section 4, township 37 north, range 6 west, parcel 016-637-04-1101 and 1201, 71.86 total acres zoned to agricultural 1, known as the Thompson Plant 386. Permit is desired for the 5-year renewal of conditional use permit number 19-023 for the location operation of a non-metallic mining extraction operation, including rock crusher and temporary asphalt plant. Conditional use permit was originally approved back in March 29, 2008, and most recently renewed on May 17, 2019. As part of the staff report, this would be for the 5-year renewal. Property is approximately 71.86 acres with approximately 14 acres currently active and zoned to agricultural 1. Existing surrounding use of the area is light agricultural, light forestry, light residential, with the nearest residence approximately 600 feet away into the northeast corner. Over the next 5 years, as part of the renewal, is anticipated to have approximately 16 acres of open area. The current hours of operation for the crushing plant and hot mix plant are 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday, with normal hours of operation specified as normally daylight hours Monday through Saturday. The zoning department does not have any complaints on file for the site, and financial assurance has been received in the form of a bond for $32,000 as part of the conditions listed in the staff report. That would include to maintain compliance with NR 135 reclamation plan, maintain compliance with plan of operation, including current hours of operation, which would be daylight hours, and that the crushing plant and hot mix plant would be operational from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday. And then also to maintain compliance with Department of Natural Resources, Chapter 30. As per the town board, motion was approved. Ronald Buckles, chairman, Bill Haynes, supervisor, Ted Matazinski, supervisor. Signed town clerk, Janine Pazin, with that there never have been any complaints on this site. There were 15 opinion letters sent out, 5 returned with no objections, 1 with objections. I have no objections. David Dansman, no objections. Alan Dansman, no objections. Thompson Trust, no objections. Robert Heavier. I have no objections. I have no objections. Lucille Wall. I believe the committee members got these as well, but I'll be in the objection one.
That also, if you look at the name, who it was addressed to,
It's different.
and it's different, and we say in there, do not make copies to send them. Up to you
Interesting.
guys.
Okay. The objection one that we have is that number 1 is there's noise pollution, possible groundwater pollution. The mine is up against the Bruni River. You have to be careful with this one, Randy Schneider. You were saying that it's not that individual?
No, he's not the owner. Look at the name highlighted on the bottom. That's not who the letter was sent to. Highlighted above his name. No, not really.
That was the one for the objection, yeah. Or was there another objection one that was submitted?
There was.
Okay.
Yes. And that maybe I did put that back there. I was thinking it was that one. That's why I had it in the back. Sorry. But there's one with that. Maybe you're right.
While he's looking for that, I will state that Mr. Buckholz will be abstaining from this vote since he is a member of the town board of Meadowbrook. And I will also
Unless I
state
think
that
of a different-
Mr. Righeimer has to leave at 10 o'clock.
Goodness.
But
Ideally.
as long as you stay for this vote, we're good.
Okay, I don't know where that other objection one is. If it was, it wasn't per the,
Maybe it was on a different.
Okay.
case. I've got it.
so in either case, that is all.
Okay, at this time, need a motion to go into public hearing?
Yes, so moved.
So moved. We have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are in public hearing.
I do have one comment sheet here. This is from Janet Thompson. She's not wishing to speak, but she's here registering as the property owner. I believe there is the agent for the pit that would like to speak.
Yeah, if we can have the applicant or representative, please state your name and who you represent.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Pepper. I'm here with Milestone Materials. We're just asking for the renewal of the Thompson pit. No changes made, just a standard CUP renewal.
Okay, no formal complaints against the pit in the last 5 years?
Not that we're aware of.
And the hours are going to be the same as they have been? No changes?
Yes, no changes
No
to the
changes.
hours, no changes to the operations, just to keep operating there as we have been.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee on that?
I guess I do, Mr. Chairman. Whenever these come up, we always ask the question about reclamation of areas, that you've maybe exhausted all the resources in that area. Is that part of the plan with a pit like this?
So we haven't done any restoration yet. However, as we go through, there's not a large area to work in as far as operating goes. But when it comes time to close the pit, then we would do a full reclamation for NR 135.
Thank you.
That should have been that should be stated in somewhere in the CUP, right, as far as reclamation? or is it-
Yeah, and so individuals are charged annually for open acreage, and we're actually going to be increasing that amount here within the next year or so. To, kind of have more of a caveat or carrot to do reclamation as you go, but there is nothing that would be as of a requirement that you have to reclamate as you go. Now, you could pay, larger annual fees for open areas, but when the pit comes to a closure status, then yes, it is implemented and you have to do the full reclamation. And we do keep that, that bond money, or basically, that surety money, that if the operator or the owner went under, that we can collect on that money to go in there and do reclamation ourselves.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, ma'am. Anybody wishing to speak in favor, or you?
I'm also with Milestone
Okay.
Materials, Brandon Lindy. I'm area manager for the pits in Sawyer County. As to the amount of open acreage we have there, this site does have an asphalt plant added occasionally. So generally an asphalt plant needs between 4 and 7 acres to operate. So that's the reason for not doing concurrent reclamation to this point, because we have to have space for the crusher to be in there as well as the asphalt plant at the same time. A crusher usually needs between 1 and 2 acres, depending how big the job is that they're making material for. So the reason that pit is the 13, 14 acres is just because the areas that are open at the front aren't really conducive to closing up, because we need to have safe access for traffic. So as we progress through that pit, there will be concurrent reclamation done. We just have a certain footprint we have to maintain to allow for crushing and an asphalt plant at the same time. So we were just planning to go mine it all out and wait to the end to do the reclamation. As you said, we are charged for the open acres, so we will, once we have the space and develop the pit further, be reclaiming behind us as we go.
That asphalt plant, that's not something new. That's something you've been doing in the past. Is that correct?
It's occasionally in there, and I believe that that requires a CUP, or is that in zoning?
Caitlin again. We include it in our conditional use permit, so that way if a job comes up in the area, we're able to bring in a temporary asphalt plant. One has been brought in the past to that site, and it has been part of the CUP historically.
Great. Thanks. Any questions for Brandon or Caitlin? No? Okay, thank you. Any public comments in support of this CUP? Anybody wishing to speak in opposition to the CUP? Hearing none, need a motion to come out of public.
So
hearing.
moved, Chairman.
So moved by Mr. Schuman. We have a second by Mr. Righeimer. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. we are
This is
now-
the discussion action in the town of Meadowbrook, conditional use permit number 22-016, owner Janet K. Thompson, Milestone Materials as the agent, legal description is previously read into record. This conditional use permit is desired for the 5-year renewal of CUP 19-023 for the location and operation of a non-metallic mineral extraction operation, including rock crusher and temporary asphalt plant.
Committee members, discussion on this, minus Mr. Buckles, of course. It passed unanimous at the town board. There's been no complaints on file. So what are your,
Motion to approve.
you make a motion to approve? I'll-
Motion to
I'll
approve the
second that.
CUP, allowing the J's read into record possible conditions for approval, along with the finding of facts for approval.
Okay,
Included in my motion.
motion by Mr. Schuman, second by myself, including for approval, including the findings of fact as read. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0.
All right, moving on. This is a public hearing in the town of Radisson, conditional use permit number 22-017, owners Leonard Yaden Jr., east one half and northeast one quarter of the northwest one quarter, section 32, township 38 north, range 6 west, parcel 022-638-322102, 20 total acres zoned to agricultural 1. Permit is desired for the post frame construction of an accessory building, 36 by 52, 39 by 55 with eaves. For section 4.26, parent 1 is the construction of a accessory structure on vacant land subject to conditions. Those conditions be included that that within a 3-year time frame that a principal dwelling land use permit be applied for, and the principal dwelling be built within that same permit time frame. Failure to build the principal dwelling will result in citation in order for removal of the accessory structure. As per conversations with the applicant, the conditional use permit is first being requested for an outdoor building prior to constructing the cabin. The proposed accessory structure is to meet all other county zoning setbacks and use requirements. For the conditions as listed in the staff report, that the land use permit is required and applied for the accessory structure within 1 year from the date of the zoning committee decision. That the land use permit is required for the principal structure within 3 years from the date of the zoning committee decision. And that failure to apply with these conditions will result in citations with potential orders for removal of the accessory building. The proposed accessory structure is to meet all other Sawyer County zoning and conservation requirements, including setbacks, and comply with other state and federal laws. That the size of the proposed accessory structure not exceed 39 by 55 with eaves with no habitable area. As motioned by the town board was approved, Phil Quaid, chairman, Robert Billiard, supervisor, Ron Kinsley, supervisor. No additional comments. Signed Cheryl Gerber, town clerk. There were 4 opinion letters sent out, 1 returned, no objections. I'm happy to have Leonard as my neighbor, Robert Dombrowski Trust. That is all.
Okay, need a motion to go into
Yes, sir. Motion to go in.
motion
Public hearing.
and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're in public hearing. I will take this time to release. You're free to go, John. I know you gotta go.
Chairman.
So we still have 3 members. Yeah. So we have a quorum still. Public hearing is the
Appreciate it,
applicant,
John.
landowner present.
And a sheet for Leonard Yates.
I'm Leonard Yaden, I'm the owner of 9105 West Irvine Drive, Ojibwa, and I'm here to ask approval for conditional use permit for.
Okay, I see the dimensions, the footprint. What's the height? Is that listed?
What we what we got for bids back in December, January may change. We're looking to do a gambrel, make it look like a barn.
Oh, yeah.
And then have a loft for storage upstairs and then have a shop downstairs so I can keep all my equipment and tools on site to develop the property. Since then, we're 46,000 over budget, so we might make it smaller or postpone it for several months, but.
Can make it smaller, just not bigger.
Right, right. Square footage is gonna stay the same. I just might make it look like a machine shed instead of a barns.
Okay, and you're planning to build a residence within 3 years?
Yes.
Like within 2 years, or would you have a plan?
Within the specified time.
Within the specified time, okay. Any other questions for the
I do,
applicant?
Mr. Yates. So you got some shoreline here too also, sir, it looks like?
There is,
Okay, and you're aware of the setbacks and everything?
there is. Jay
Correct, Jay?
has filled me in.
I have a map here. There is some wetlands. We've been on site for the wetlands, for the placement of the driveway. So he'll be, outside of the wetland setbacks there. Yes, there are lake setbacks, but the proposed accessory structure, I believe was over 150 feet, even close to 200 feet back from that lake. The cabin would be proposed a little bit closer, but 75 would be the standard shoreline zoning setbacks there.
Thank you.
Any questions, Ron?
No, I don't have any.
All right,
Thanks, Mr.
thank you,
Chairman.
sir. Anybody like to speak in favor of this CUP in the room, online? Anybody like to speak in opposition in the room, online? Hearing none, motion to come out of public hearing.
So move.
Second.
Motion and second, further discussion, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, discussion action.
Discussion action, Town of Radisson, CUP 22-017, legal description is previously read into record. This permit is desired for an accessory structure prior to building a primary dwelling, subject to section 4.26, parent 1, with conditions as read into record as per my staff report.
Minnie?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve with the conditions and findings of facts 1 through 9 and the conditions that Jay has in his staff report.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Buckles, second by Mr. Schuman for CUP 22-017, listing the findings of facts 1 through 9 and conditions as read by Mr. Kozlowski. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
All right, moving on. This is a public hearing in the town of Bass Lake, conditional use permit number 22-018, owner Rodney Olson. Avon Post Beach, lots 24 through 30, lots 11 through 15, and lots 9 through 10 of block 18. Section 30, Township 49 North, Range 8 West, parcel 002-1031-8400, 1100, and 0900, which is 1.03 total acres, zone residential recreational 1. Also for parcel ending in 1100 and 09, I believe that's actually, 0900, which is zone residential recreational 1 and residential recreational 2. It's kind of split zoning through here. Permit is desired for the construction of a 1,400 square foot private woodworking shop as allowed in Sawyer County zoning ordinance section 17.3 parent B parent 6 for the construction for a construction business trim work. The building would be entered on Post and Fox Avenues on lot 16 and would be located within the RR2 zone district. As per the staff report, and maybe I'll just pause here for a second and ask legal counsel this. We did have a member just leave to answer an important phone call, and now we no longer have a quorum. Should we postpone this process at this point?
Yeah, why don't we take a recess to allow that member to return, and once we do, once we have a quorum back, then we can proceed.
Okay.
Motion for a 5-minute recess.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right.
Approved.
No hard silence. All right, we'll pick it back up where we left off. This is for conditional use permit number 22-018. I read in the legal description for the case. I'll reread the request. The purpose of the request is to construct a 1,400 square foot private woodworking shop as per the Surrey County zoning ordinance section 17.3 parent B parent 6 for construction business trim work. The building would be entered on Post and Fox Avenue on lot 16 and would be located in the RR2 zone district. The applicant is requesting to build a 1,400 square foot woodworking shop per those ordinance requirements for a private or wholesale carpentry woodworking shop limited to the property owner. The proposed structure would meet all setbacks. However, this request is a little unique in that it would be the only building on the parcel. Generally, you would see this type of request for a property that already had a habitable dwelling under the principal structure on the property. In this case, the applicant is requesting that the woodworking shop would be the principal structure and that the property would contain no habitable dwelling. The reason this request was initially even processed through the zoning office is that you would see other types of conditional use permits allowed within the zoning ordinance under section 17.b that would be allowed for a restaurant, a marina, a sports shop, a real estate office, or a hair salon. You know, these types of uses authorized by a CUP generally would not be accompanied by a habitable dwelling. The use and the structure would be viewed as the primary or principal use of the property. This request seemed to have more of a commercial aspect to it though. The owner would have no nearby residence and there are several other adjacent property owner residences in the area. The problem arises that if the property is sold, we now have created a non-conforming use and the structure on it would be a garage or an accessory structure on vacant land. As per the town of Bass Lake, motion was denied. Justin Hall, chairman, Marshall Savitsky, supervisor, Dave Aubraut, supervisor, Jim Evans, supervisor, Bob Hammond, supervisor. In that the motion was denied in that granting the conditional use permit would be contrary to public interest and would not be in compliance with the spirit and the intent of the Surrey County zoning ordinance because of the town of Bass Lakes Comprehensive Plan section 8.10, because it does not fall within the uses allowed by the zone districts within platted subdivisions. Number two, it would be a de facto rezone from residential to commercial use. Number three, it would be damaging to the rights or others and property values in the residential subdivision. Number four, it is not compatible with surrounding uses in the Northwoods Beach subdivision. Number five, it would have a negative effect on the development of residential dwellings within the subdivision. Number six, it does not comply with the intent or the purpose of Bass Lake Comprehensive Plan or the Surrey County zoning ordinance. This is not a similar use within the zone district. Number seven, this is a non-conforming use and would be an accessory structure or a garage on vacant land. That was signed by Erica Waschirsky, town clerk. I have a written statement from Rodney Olson, which I believe you sent out to the committee members. Therefore, that is then incorporated into the record. And the additional opinion letters, there were 14 sent out, 2 were returned, both of those with no objections. Jacqueline Yurgis, no objections, and then Wayne Schaefer, no objections. Here's that additional one that was added in here, and that's the one that had the objections that are not within 300 feet. I'm just going to read this into record because why not? I'm concerned about the additional traffic to Post and Fox Avenue. I'm concerned about the noise created by power saws and repeated equipment. This is not a commercial area. We will be building next spring and chose this lot and land area because it is quiet and private. That's a Kelly Rare. I guess also I should note, as part of my potential conditions, again, this one is a little unique. We haven't seen this type of request before. That my conditions, though, if we look for an approval motion of something of this nature, that CUP 22-018 is limited to the property owner. The land use permit is required prior to constructing the building. The size of the woodworking building not to exceed 1,400 square feet. That a covenant be recorded on the property. That upon sale of the property, that a land use permit to build a habitable dwelling is applied for on that existing woodworking building. or that the existing woodworking building is removed from the property, that all materials are to be stored inside, that hours of operation for the trim business woodworking shop be 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Sunday, and that the zoning committee can amend those hours if need be, that all other, town, county, state, federal laws are followed. That is all.
Need a motion to go into public hearing.
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public hearing is the applicant. Yes, sir.
Yep.
Please state your name and
Rodney Olson. I live at 8029N County Highway K. Hayward. Already have a residence in the area and my own personal garage. And this is going to be for my construction, to support my construction business. It won't be, I don't consider it a commercial use. I mean, it could be something you could do in a garage, but I don't consider this a garage. I just consider this a woodworking shop that it says under conditional use that it's allowed. It's allowed under number 6 on B on 17.3. Private and wholesale carpentry woodworking shop limited to property. I do own a pretty large part. I own 26 lots between Fox and Post Avenue. My property is zoned RR2. The area is fairly flat. All activities will be done inside an insulated building to eliminate noise. This use will be occasional when needed, not every day. I don't feel it'll impact any of the neighbors. The letter that you got was from approval of it, is the one that's the closest to me. I did question on one thing. It says on lot 16. If I set it in the center, it'll be on 2 different lots. Because I own between both roads, Fox and Post.
What was the reason the town denied it?
So they had quite a few different reasons. The majority being that it does not fall within their town of Bass Lakes comprehensive plan. It would not fall into uses allowed within the zone district of a platted subdivision. It would be a de facto rezone from residential to commercial. It would be damaging the rights of others. It's not compatible with the surrounding land use. It would have a negative impact on development of the residential area. Again, does not comply with the intent or the purpose of the Bass Lakes comprehensive plan. And that is a non-conforming use and would be an accessory structure on vacant land. And again, that last portion is kind of where I struggled with this one here as well, as we haven't seen a request quite like this where, again, if you had a bar restaurant, you wouldn't anticipate someone having their dwelling there as well. In some circumstances maybe, but in most cases, you don't generally see a dwelling, attached with the bar. Similar with a marina, as through a conditional use permit process, you usually don't see a dwelling associated with that as well. The woodworking shop one is a little unique in that, if you build this as a woodworking shop, I guess if the property was to sell, that new individual coming in would have to apply for a conditional use permit to, still operate that as a woodworking shop. But if they wanted to then, just try to turn that into, just vacant land, and they weren't going to do the woodworking shop. Now we have a building that's sitting there that's treated as basically a garage on vacant land. So that's kind of the can of worms that could potentially be opened with this type of scenario. It's interesting. It's unique.
It is.
But I think you can structure some conditions to mitigate those concerns.
are you planning to sell this in the near future?
I have a home in the area, and that's why I need this building to do my work in. I do have a garage at my lot, I think, my lot is really too small for me to build anything here, and I have all these lots in Northwoods Beach that I've acquired to keep everybody around, I bought them all, so I have no close neighbors.
So you're making woodworking stuff to sell though, is that correct?
No, it's mainly like when I do a house or build a house, I make all the trim work. And I do like the window jams, and I build the doors and all that stuff.
Okay.
Would be inside.
So you had some big molders and planers and stuff?
Not big, just a router table, regular saws. Mostly what a homeowner would have,
Okay. So not industrial size?
not industrial, no,
Okay.
not commercial, industrial, not for other people. It's stuff that when you go to a job site, you can't router your window trim.
Okay. Any other questions for?
Yeah, you're just gonna use it mainly for like your business, right? For your own business
Yeah.
to work out of, not for anybody else?
Nope. No, but in the town seemed to be, they didn't really know how to do it, and I don't know if it was bad luck on my part, but at the planning committee, the chairman was sick, so Phil Neese, he filled in, and I feel as though he led them all down a different path. And then it just seemed like when I went to the town board meeting, they just did what the planning committee said.
Oh,
You have questions?
yeah. Jay, was it a unanimous denial then, or was it heavily debated?
So maybe we should change our forms as to who's in denial and who's in approval. But ultimately, our form, and not that those online can see this, but our form just has, are you in favor or denial? And then the request of the town signatures. So it'd be my anticipation that if you were in favor of this, you wouldn't sign a denial letter.
Right.
Similarly to a rezone. If you were, against a rezone denial, but yet the motion still passed, then don't sign the approval letters. But maybe we should structure that differently, but every town board supervisor and chairman has signed this, and it was for denial.
Okay. That's all, Chairman.
Okay, anybody want to speak in support of this CUP? Anybody wishes to speak in opposition? Okay, hearing none, need a motion to come out of public hearing.
So moved, Chairman.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Discussion action, the town of Bass Lake conditional use permit number 22-018, owner Rodney Olson, legal description is previously read into record. This request is for a 1,400 square foot private woodworking shop is allowed per Sawyer County zoning ordinance, section 17.3, parent B, parent 6, for a construction business trim work. And then again, reference the staff report for any additional conditions of approval that may be made.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to deny this based on the town's decision and the findings of facts for denials number 9 through 15.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Schuman for denial of this CUP.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for CUP 22-018 for denial. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we usually, we pretty much go with what the towns do. I understand Mr. Olson's for him doing his own work, but with the town said, I agree with Mr. Schuman, we can't approve it.
So, yeah, I mean, I, take the town's say so into huge consideration, and I always have in my decision-making process. I just, in this case, I don't know if they had all the facts, because it clearly states in our own county ordinance, section 17.3 V6, that this type of facility is specifically authorized. So when the town says it's, doesn't meet their ordinance for platted subdivisions, one, is this a platted subdivision?
It is. This was within the Northwoods Beach area, and this would be included as part of the Abbott Post Beach subdivision. Now that subdivision area, if it is not specifically allowed within the town, that would be included within their town comprehensive plan. There would be no special designation within the county zoning codes or ordinances or comp plans.
So if it violates their town ordinance for platted subdivisions, then that makes more sense to me, but it does not in any way that I can see violate our county ordinance. You know, and if the covenants were in place that if the landowner were to sell this, then the purchaser of the land would have to either A, build a new house, B, have it removed, and then I would have added a third one, or they maintain it as a woodworking shop to be in compliance with the county zoning law. But that's not what we're discussing. We're discussing, you know, the denial. And, you know, it is a unique situation, as been pointed out. And personally, I don't see a reason why it should be denied, but that's just me. So any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Schuman, second by Mr. Buckholz, is that right?
Yes.
For the disapproval, denial of CUP 22-01A. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. So motion passes for denial by a vote of 2-1.
Moving on under new business. This is what you have up on the screen is the red line comparison for the Sawyer County zoning ordinance amendments for the allowance of the storage sheds on vacant land. This is kind of my final draft version. This would be the version that would go out to the towns for them to review and potentially approve. Ultimately, we would need 50% of town approvals in order to move forward on an ordinance amendment. I would get those out to the towns ASAP, and that they would review them at their June town board meetings, and then have a official public hearing for the ordinance amendments in June then as well. If there's any additional questions on this, we'd also have it go out to legal counsel for, you know, a full review. And in discussion with legal counsel, there was a few minor corrections that they had noted. And it's really just more of a procedural aspect. When I use the definitions later down in the ordinance language, be it in section 4.26, you know, I said an exemption is granted for one storage shed. That capitalized lettering references it back to the definition section, but the definition section has it as storage shed / storage structure, and also it's shipping containers / intermodal containers. So when I use those definitions further down in the language, I'll be including the full definition as referenced further up in the definition section. So again, 4.26, the exemption is granted for one storage shed in the capitalization. That'll be storage shed / storage structure. And then further down under parent 8, a shipping container, it'll be a shipping container / intermodal container, just so that it's coherent between the definitions and the actual ordinance is to where it's referenced. But other than that, Andy Phillips's quick review of this didn't seem to have too many concerns outside of that, which I just referenced. He'll probably most likely still be doing a full legal review to make sure that it doesn't conflict with any other state statutes then as well.
So you want to get this, approve it to send it off to the towns then on what you got here?
Yeah, as I have referenced in the agenda, it would be for discussion, possible action to send to towns for approval and to have that full legal review, legal counsel review. Again, we would then, once we submit this out to the towns, which we're gonna, if approved here today, would go out immediately to the towns in hopes that they could still review that at their June public, or at their June town board meetings. We'll get that information back to them and we'll hold an official public hearing in June.
Okay, so I make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to send this off, that version of the storage sheds and shipping containers to the towns for approval and legal counsel review.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to send to towns and legal counsel for review and to towns for approval, legal counsel for review by Mr. Buckholz and a second by Mr. Schuman. Any further discussion? Couple questions. So the town review, what would we be looking for? Not 100% compliant, just majority of the 16.
Yeah, so we have
towns,
a specialized letter that we send out to the towns for any type of zoning ordinance amendment, and per state statutes, any zoning ordinance amendment would require 50% or majority of town approvals in order to enact that amendment. So if we get this back from the towns, and let's say we have the 15 towns, if we only get 7 that are approving of this ordinance amendment, it's dead. It can't move forward because I need a majority of the towns to approve an ordinance amendment for the zoning ordinance.
So it's actually only 15, right? Because we don't send it to Spider Lake. So it's 15.
Correct. They have their own.
So that we need 8. And then are they allowed to, it's either yes or no, or are they allowed to?
They're allowed to make comments, and generally when we've done these in the past, if there's concerns with certain towns, they'll actually come to that public hearing process. That's the kind of slippery slope that we play, because if we get all these additional comments back and you agree with them, which is rightfully so for you being on the committee, if you agree with them, then we have to go back in the process.
Exactly.
Again.
That's what I was getting at. If we take the input from the towns, which I think we're past that. I think we've gotten input already. So now
we at least sent out
have
that
this
questionnaire to them
to send this out, because what I think what's going to happen is people are going to make their own little changes. Well, yeah, I agree with this, but not this. And so then if we did and accepted those, we would have to redo this and then send it out once again. So I would like to see, in the motion, and it wasn't clarified, but they send out for town approval, and it's either, they can add comments, but it's either it's approval or disapproval.
Yep.
And then, so what would the legal review entail then? Like, how comprehensive are we talking? It sounds like that's been done.
Yeah, I would leave it up to Andy to answer that one.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could briefly, I want to review it to make sure that there is internal consistency with this proposed amendment and as well consistency with the balance of the code. I looked at it from a substantive standpoint. I don't see any substantive issue. And so if I'm just correcting technical references or definitional items without changing the substance of the amendment, it does not need to go back to the towns.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. If there was, additional comments that were found, or during the public hearing process, we found a typo or something like that, it's something as the merit of substantial change that would have to go back for the review process, correct?
That's right.
You have a question, Ms. Ziller? No, if you have a question, but this is not a public hearing. What is your question?
Linda Zilmer, I have a question about the language and possible for your discussion or legal review, is that these storage structures are not really accessory buildings, and it's not clear to me whether they would be allowed in all zone districts or not. And I think it is complicating to use the word exemption. So it is a permitted use or it's not a permitted use in which zone districts? Because they're not accessory, they're gonna be standalone on vacant land. So I just believe that this language was not ready to go to the town.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. That's not a question.
Oh, that is a question, because I'd rather have address it now.
Okay, thank you. It's not a,
That would be something for the public hearing process, which we still have to hold on this. I did carve this out as an exemption in that there are other exemptions that are listed within code, specifically within the shoreline zoning ordinance. There are exemptions that are granted to specific codes. And if we don't have it as an exemption, it has to get structured a little bit differently, but I feel like this works. And I've gotten the approvals of other individuals that were contentious against that, included Mr. Phil Neese, who unfortunately wasn't able to be here today, but he actually called me the other day and commended me for putting this draft version you have here today in front of you.
Yeah, Jay, he must have got off the phone with you, he called me too, so he said he just got off with you, so. But I got a question, Mr. Betcher, you're saying when we send this out to the towns, you're just looking for either approval or denial without a comment?
I think that they can comment. Of course, I hope they have their own town hearings and they're gonna have feedback. But the problem is with 15 towns, if we take all that feedback and then try to incorporate it in additional changes, then we're gonna have to redo it and send it out again, which this has already been sent out.
Yes.
We've already gotten town input and approval through the
questionnaire
The
process. I
questionnaire.
mean, this is the
consensus.
right.
So just to try to make progress instead of stagnating, I think we're at a point now that this looks pretty good.
I
Is it
agree,
perfect?
and that's, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding what you're saying, because I agree with you on that. I mean, we've been doing this for a while, it looks good to me also, and I just like to get it done and get it pushed through, so that's why I asked that.
But we will definitely take their input into consideration, and then if we need to make changes later, or amendments, then we can do that. But I would like to get this done and codified, in my opinion. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, do I have to read it back up? Or do you?
No, she has it more.
Okay.
Yeah.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion passes.
Yeah, so item B, I have, I guess it's somewhat again of as a policy interpretation. Zoning's hard. The zoning ordinance that we have, it is hard. There are gray areas always, and they usually don't become that light bulb scenario until someone brings it up and like, hey, yeah, you're actually, you're kind of making some sense. One of them is the nature of mini warehouse storage. Mini warehouse storage is listed right now as a permitted use within the commercial 1 zone district. It is also authorized by a conditional use permit in the agricultural 1 and agricultural 2 zone district. We don't have a definition of mini warehouse storage. We've always, I guess, taken it as that it's just to be a storage building. Whether or not they're separate bays as to be, mini storage that are 8 by 8, but the definition of mini to someone could be 8 by 8, but the definition of mini to another could be a 30 by 30 bay included in a 200 by 60 storage building. We've been using that mini warehouse storage as really kind of any commercial storage area. The one we're seeing a larger push on now is boat storage. We're seeing a lot of boat storage buildings getting erected throughout the county. And I just wanted to bring that, I guess, to this committee is are you in that same mindset? Is that interpretation of mini warehouse storage to be for really any type of that commercial storage aspect, whether it's an 8 by 8 bay or whether it's a 30 by 30 bay, it's storage for other individuals?
That like a commercial property that you rent out those individual
Right.
days.
Yeah.
That's what I.
And that's how it's listed in the ordinance. It says mini warehouse storage. And I just want to make sure before something came up and someone said, well, a 200 by 60 with, 30 by 30 bays, that's not mini warehouse storage. The code only allows for mini warehouse storage. But we don't have that definition as, okay, what's your mini definition versus my mini definition? Your mini might be 40 by 40, mine's 6 by 6.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring that up to this committee before it becomes an issue at the town.
Why do we have, sorry, Trevor,
Oh, go ahead.
why do we have the word mini in there anyway?
It's the way it's always been.
Warehouse storage.
Yeah. And that could be something that could be cleaned up, with ordinance amendments. Obviously, we're going to be going through an ordinance amendment process, whether it's, a cleanup or, codification of resort versus the multifamily. I can add that in there and we just strike out the line mini. That might be the best case to go that route. And include
Yeah,
that as part of
I
that
would take the
ordinance
mini
amendment.
right out of it.
Yeah. All right, that's all I had for that. It was just discussion there. And I think I'll try to work that in with my next ordinance amendment process.
You probably shouldn't put like commercial warehouse storage because these don't have to be on commercial zone property.
They're permitted on commercial, they're needing cups on A1, A2.
Right, I'm just thinking of another to identify
Yeah.
more, because I agree, mini can be confusing, so
Right.
I'd like to probably take that off, but I don't know if we then need to replace it with a different word, so there's no confusion. Rentable. Something, I'm just asking, it's just discussion, right?
It is, yeah. I agree. Yeah, we could throw something in that rentable warehouse storage.
Because if it says just warehouse storage, then I could think a giant warehouse, like 200 by 200, one giant room, and you're only renting out that one warehouse facility to one person, but that's not the intent either.
No, it
So
wouldn't be.
if we had something that identifies it's numerous, divided, rentable units, but take out the word mini somehow.
Right.
Yeah, take out the word mini and put in multi-warehouse storage. You got different.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, I'll work on that. So we can move on from that. Item C here I have is for the neighbor opinion letters. I recently found out that we're the only county that has the actual comments portion as far as our legal requirements that we send out to adjacent property owners within 300 feet. Or at least the only ones that I got back from my mass email I sent out to the other 71 counties. Majority or all of the ones I got back, it's a very generic form that has, here is the conditional use permit that's taking place on this property. Here's the meeting date and time. If you'd like to submit additional comments, you can do so. But it doesn't have the actual check mark boxes of those in approval or those in opposition. And I'm wondering if this committee wants to potentially change that type of policy, in that we are kind of the only ones. And I think we're probably going a little above and beyond as to what the state statutes would require for notification. I had this conversation with Mr. Phillips, and he kind of agreed that we don't need to go to that extent to send out those opinion letters to adjacent property owners. If they want to make additional comments, they can submit them to our office, which then we would still forward on to you. But it's basically to change the form letters that we send out, that it would just reference what the request is for and the date and the time of the meeting. If they want additional information, they can go here. If they want to submit additional comments, they can do it there.
Great. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, make them do.
Because it almost seems like, some of the cases that we've been getting over the last couple of months, there's either confusion between those adjacent property owners, or they're using that form or that opportunity to make a huge argument over something that may not be that contentious of a case. But That's why I'm just trying to streamline and simplify the process as well.
If I could, Mr. Chair.
More work for you too, would it, Jay, in your office?
It would.
Yes.
If I could, Mr. Chair, let me just amend what Mr. Kozlowski said. I didn't kind of agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I was surprised to see the process that the county utilizes. It's not necessary under state statute. And from a legal perspective, it has the potential to create more problems in terms of what you receive back becoming part of the record than anything.
Okay, yeah, great. I mean, as long as we're not violating any state statutes, we have to send the letters out to people within a certain distance.
It's notification to those adjacent properties within 300 feet that there's either being a conditional use permit requested or a rezone requested or a variance requested.
Right. And the current way we do business almost encourages people to formulate an opinion. We're enticing them to come forward. And I don't know if that's our responsibility as zoning committee to entice people to air grievances or be in support. We have to notify them as per state statutes, and we will continue doing that. But yeah, I agree. We can definitely streamline the process.
I agree, Mr. Chairman. I think that's our duty to inform them, not invite them or entice them to.
So does this have to next month be voted on, or can we just make this change?
So this has been a practice of the department. I, as the zoning administrator, would,
so it's up to you.
I would feel that this is my decision to make, but I wanted to bring it to you as far as discussion and make sure that you guys didn't have, arguments or concerns with me changing that process. So
I agree.
And then you'll have legal review your decision and.
yeah, I got some examples from other counties when I reached out to them as far as, okay, what type of information are you submitting out to those, those adjacent property owners? We got a lot of good information back from adjacent and other counties. So we'll try to morph some of those together. And I can certainly share what we come up with next month. Then, as far
And
as
I agree with Mr. Betcher that it's probably bogging down your staff or taking more time.
it is, and I agree with Mr. Betcher
And
too.
Mr. Phillips too.
The way it's set up now is like you said, it's enticing people to, you need to decide, are you in favor of this or are you in denial of this? Like it's almost enticing them to make that decision. And that's not what the statutes is intended to do. The statutes is intended to inform them that this is coming in your neighborhood. If you want to attend the public hearing process, here's the date and time. If you want to submit additional comments, here's how you do so.
Okay. So that's great. Sounds like it's your decision. So I thank you for letting us know that you're going to make that change.
Okay, Jay, I've got them all done for June and July.
So
I'm working on August.
July's we might change. June's will probably go out as the standard status quo
Okay.
because they're done.
Yep.
July's, I think we could probably alter, and
Okay.
again, we'll show you an example of what we're sending out at June's public hearing.
All right, sounds good.
Jay, got one question.
Yes. This would be as part of D then, right? Other new business?
D, new business.
Or is this part of this one still?
Well, it's kind of, yeah, like the neighboring opinion letters and also our ordinances. Where are we at where they can get work done so we can get this taken care of and you'll work with legal counsel and all that, right?
You're talking about for the neighbor opinion letters?
Yeah, that and also what we went through today on those different ordinances,
Yeah.
structures and.
The neighbor opinion letters is gonna be really easy, and I'll come up with a form letter and I'll bounce it off of Andy to make sure it meets the legal requirements. As far as the other language and that, there is kind of that gap in the ordinance on this multifamily development. The rental of 2 dwelling units on 1 lot, the resort type of usage. That'll need a more holistic overview, and that's a longer, lengthier process for sure. Like it was stated in the beginning of the meeting, someone did file an administrative appeal about a decision I made. Like I said, I don't know if any of you remember that back from September of 2020, but I brought up a situation where there was 2 existing dwelling units on 1 lot, and they wanted to rent both of those dwelling units out. They're pre-existing dwelling units and permitted to be dwelling units. It was an old resort. They got split up, and back in that day, you could do that. You could split it, and you'd have 2 separate cabins on 1 lot. They then wanted to rent both of those units. And I brought that for you to decide, okay, how do we move forward on these? Do you want to allow it? Do you not want to allow it? Are they a resort? Are they not a resort? And really that policy discussion came about that you didn't feel that it was a resort. I didn't feel that it was a resort, and someone challenged that decision. Now it got upheld at Board of Appeals, which probably now is going to go to circuit court. But it's interesting is to, okay, the language in the ordinance is weak at best, and it's, you know, having those corrections possibly done, but at the extent of if we make those corrections that, you know, I'm not necessarily pushing for it. I'm just trying to clean up the ordinance. It's really up to you as the zoning committee. It's up to the towns. It's up to the general public is what we want to see as the county moving forward. Do you want to allow rentals of 2 dwelling units on one lot and not view them as a resort? Do you want to view them as a resort and have them go through the conditional use permit process? It becomes, the further you dig into it, the more complicated of a web you start to find on that stuff.
I kind of remember that one, Jay.
But I'll start working on draft language, and, you know, it's certainly members of the public may mold that. You may, as a committee, start molding that, and we come out with a full working version, but that's a long-term process and not a short-term solution. So we do have to be consistent on if we were to receive cases in the meantime. There's a whole other aspect of the administrative appeal, which you don't necessarily need to concern yourselves with at this point, but it is another element in that process though as well.
Can I just ask, and forgive me if I should know this, do we have a specific process with dates that we go through comprehensive review on amendments to the zoning code, Jay?
No, not to my knowledge.
All right, let's just you and I talk offline about that and maybe come back to the committee with a calendar, because I think that, to your point, it is a significant undertaking to go through and amend that zoning code. And so if we calendar this in the right way, maybe we can lessen the administrative burden associated with that process. So let's just talk about that.
Okay.
Okay, great. Letter D, any other business that may come before the committee? I would like to add maybe for next month's agenda for discussion and possible action of new time and or date for the for zoning committee meetings. So
we generally do those in October for the approval of next calendar year's dates and times. Because right now, last October, you approved dates and times for this year. Now, could you change those, amend those? Yeah, there's probably a legal way to do that, but I mean, we're already taking cases for August now at this point, which we've already told people the dates and times for August meetings. That's how far in the future we have to work.
I'd still like to discuss it, even if we can't make a decision legally until October. I would still like to discuss so people have time to think, because I know that Friday, 3 or 4 hours on a Friday morning does not work as an ideal time for everybody. Maybe it is the best time, but at least we can discuss it as a committee.
Yep.
That's right.
With that entailed with changing those, we have to remember that of the getting the cases ready are deadlines and publications.
And town, it's,
And
if
town
we want the town
meetings.
comments back.
Just
so on the
kinda
town
take
meetings,
that-
there's a
Look
complicated
in-
one,
look
but
into
we'll
that.
discuss
And
it.
deconflicting with every other.
Yeah.
I realize that, but I'd like to at least take a couple minutes and discuss it with the full committee next month.
So you're looking to change the time and the date?
I'm not
Or you're just
looking,
looking for
I'm
suggestions?
just looking for discussion. If everybody is fine with Friday mornings for 3 or 4 hours, then no problem. But if it's like the majority wants, like that doesn't work for them because of other obligations or work schedules or whatever, then we might look at.
Because it seems like now we're lucky we have a quorum.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I'm looking to change it. I just know that it's been brought to my attention that this might not be the ideal time for every committee member. So I'd like to just discuss options. That's all.
Sure thing.
Jay, our town board meeting is gonna be early again next month.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna be on the 15th.
Oh, so you're not holding the one next week?
Where are you at with next week, this month?
Oh, yeah, because you.
I brought up the,
Yeah.
I brought it up to Kathy and give it, you weren't in there. So ours is, we're gonna change it to the 15th because I'm gonna be gone the 20th through the 29th.
Perfect. Then you'll end up getting the
Okay.
draft version of the shipping container language.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, if there's nothing else,
Well, real quickly, I'm sorry to interrupt, but is the meeting next month then on the 17th?
yeah, 17th.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure I had it in my calendar. Yep. Thank you.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Have a
great
good
weekend.
weekend, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Thank you, Kathy.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thanks,